Good people, good people. What up, what up? I pray that all is well in your world. Boy, Coach White, TikTok, what up? Facebook, what up? YouTube, what up? IG, what up? Yeah, man, we got a good one. We're going to pick up where we left off last week. Again, the unit is called Your Relationship with You. All right. And the sub unit, if you will, is about self awareness. And for the last couple of weeks, we've been talking about uh, pushing your buttons, right? And, what that actually looks like for you, what your buttons actually are, what your triggers are. Jamal White, what up? What up?
Peace, brother. How you feel?
Peace, bro. You know, I'm still smiling, man. Always happy you join in. Yeah, I'm just really getting started. So I was telling the people we're gonna pick up where we left off in this journey to become more self-aware and realizing, uh, what our when we talk about getting our buttons pushed, what our buttons actually are. And I'll go further to say to identify our thoughts when our buttons are pushed. We already know how we feel, but we need to really explore what our self-talk is like because 9 times out of 10, especially considering the fact that your self-talk has to be the superhero. If you are allowing your buttons to be pushed, then you're probably exhibiting some behaviors whereby the inner child in you is standing up and making the adult in you sit down. And that's what we don't want. Children tend to be impulsive. All right. So before we get into this, we got a couple quick announcements. Uh, like always, man, just encouraging you guys to check out the gallery that tells your story on YouTube. Check out the content. If you like it, like it. If you subscribe, that will be a blessing. But more importantly, I really want to know what you guys think about the content. So I'm looking for feedback. Also, always promoting the books that we have for sale on Amazon and Kindle. The Invisible Marriage is a Christian fiction novel, not to give too much away. It's about how you can be you could be married rather and be invisible inside of the marriage. So it's very interesting, I think. Then we have Forsaking All Others, which is another Christian fiction novel about a couple who goes through a whole lot of adversity, and they really have to forsake all others, literally, and make God a priority in order to weather the storms. That is a part of what I call Aiden's journey. Aiden is the main character. So yeah, check it out. Um, we have another portion of Aiden's journey that is coming out soon. I only hesitated and took a deep breath because I was hoping that it would be something that comes out sooner than later. But considering that life has its tosses and turns, uh, I had to put some funds somewhere else. So it's going to be delayed. So my prayer is that it will be out by the second quarter of 2026. All right. And then we have I Do, I Did, and It Didn't, which is another Christian fiction novel. Shout out to Rock and Taisha and Anastasia, some really dope authors that I had an opportunity and privilege of doing that book project with. It's a Christian fiction novel about people who said I do, and they did the marriage thing, but of course it didn't work out, and the things that they learned in that journey. So that book is really dope. And then also we have 50 Shades of She, which is a poetic novel depicting my wife's prior experiences with domestic violence. It's also available on Amazon. All right. Merchandise for sale. So we have the Gallery That Tells Your Story t-shirts. We have John 8 and 24 t-shirts. And we have Self-Love Over Self-Destruction t-shirts available. So if you're interested, shoot me a DM. Tonight is Coach Class with Coach. That's every Wednesday at 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we also have Bible studies on Sundays from 12 to 1 p.m. We are walking through the book of Hebrews. So just wanted to make those brief announcements. We're always looking for coaches to join our team, to come on board and to coach along with us. So if you want to be an impact to your community and you want to do it through coaching, we are welcoming you to join us as we look to expand in different states and things of that nature. So yeah, we have pretty, I think, affordable packages available. So yeah, that would be the announcements for today. Let me close that tab. Let's begin with, let me see. Well, let's, in keeping with the normal agenda, we'll share my screen. Let's look at the quote of the day. I think this quote is by Stephen Covey. Yes, it is. And it is, or it reads, self-awareness is our capacity to stand apart from ourselves and examine our thinking, our motives, our history, our scripts, our actions, and our habits and tendencies. Let me repeat that. Self-awareness is our capacity to stand apart from ourselves and examine our thinking, our motives, our history, our scripts, our actions, and our habits and tendencies. That's what self-awareness is about. All right. So if you are embarking upon this journey with us of self-improvement, then it's going to be imperative that you become more self-aware. All right. So that's the quote of the day. Kind of set the tone. I think we're going to go one more place just to reintroduce the article, which is called Disarming Your Buttons. Let's go another place real quick. I have a really dope diagram to show you. So on this diagram in TikTok, unfortunately, you can't see it unless you join in on the stream or where we're streaming the presentation. It has a button in the middle, and the button is labeled with the word anger. But it also has in this diagram, if you will, several arrows pointing to responses to anger. Now, this is a button, but the irony is that it's labeled a boomerang effect. You know, and those of you all who are aware of boomerangs, the concept of a boomerang is when you throw it out, that it's going to come right back to you. So we have a button in the middle of this diagram that when you press it, there's several different outcomes or responses. One of them is losing control. One of them is losing inner peace. Another one is losing happiness. Another one is separating from others, reacting instead of acting, or reacting instead of responding, feeling regretful and embarrassed, losing yourself or losing friends. All right. So a lot of losses as a result of this button being pushed, and the emotion that is associated with this button is anger. So this implies that when you're angry, you'll respond in one of the ways illustrated. And not only will you respond according to what's being illustrated, but you will throw this emotion out, and it will come back to you in accordance to how you respond. Right? So I thought it was a interesting button, and it was a segue for us to get back into the article that we've been reading. All right. But before we do that, I want to reintroduce, and I'm giving you coaches a bone that you can use for your clients. So I'm going to stop sharing here. I don't think I'm going to come back to this. So I'm going to close this out and share my screen again. And let me go to the second, open up the second whiteboard. Is this it? This is not it. So let me stop here. Let me come back to that whiteboard. There will be 1 second. Let me go to the first one. No, it's not that one. Okay, it's this one. All right. All right. So here's a bone for you. And Jamal, I have a sample right here that we're going to walk through. So put your best coaching hat on, which I know you always have on. And TikTok, you know, you guys aren't exempt. Put your best coaching hat on as well. And we're going to go through what I call Logic 101. There's 2 words that I write on the chalkboard. The first word is if, because if introduces a condition. All right. The second word is then. Then introduces a conclusion. All right. So here's the sample. And we kind of introduced this particular sample last week. And we were talking about, Jamal, if you remember, we were talking about people who struggle with insecurities and how they have the most buttons of them all because they're so insecure. They have a very heightened sensitivity to a lot of things. So in this sample, we're going to assume that you have a client that struggles with insecurities resulting in anger. All right. And let's assume that this client mentioned that she often compares herself to others. And in doing so, she finds herself becoming angry. So what are some things that we want to help this client explore? So let's take into account and what's the first thing, Jamar, for you that may come to mind as our whiteboard? What are some things as a coach that you want to help this client to explore?
Their love for self.
Okay. Love for herself. All right. Now, what does that look like? when you are helping a client, or when you will help a client to explore uh, why she becomes insecure, why her insecurities result in anger, and your thought was, hey, I'm going to help her with understanding the importance of how to love herself. What does that look like from a coach to a client? What would that look like?
First, for me, it's like positive affirmations, you know? Um,
Okay.
so letting her know, like, she lacks nothing, you know what I mean? So just positive affirmation first, getting her to, um, getting her to see the greatness within herself.
Okay.
And start preparing herself to others.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. So we're gonna break this down into four basic categories. All right. So we're gonna help the client to explore her thoughts, her feelings or emotions, her self-talk, and her behaviors. All right. To coincide with what you mentioned as well, which was some really points. So we want to know what when you see in the sample, because according to the sample, she struggles with insecurities resulting in anger. So she mentioned that she often compares herself to others. So when we want to know when you're comparing yourself to others, what are you thinking? And we want the client to identify what her thoughts are. When she's looking, whether she's doing it on social media, whether she's out in public doing it, whenever she's doing it, we want the client to identify specifically everything that she's thinking in that moment. All right. The next thing we want to do is we want to know, okay, now that we know what you're thinking, what are you feeling in that moment? All right. So, because what we want to do is help the client to connect her thoughts with her feelings. And the reason why that's important, point number 3, if you will, self talk. What are you telling yourself in that moment? All right. What are you feeling in that moment? What are you thinking in that moment? All right. And we want the client to be able to understand how all of these things connect. But it starts with what? Thoughts. That's why we start first with the thoughts. And then we figure out, well, really the feelings portion of it is easy. Anybody could pretty much tell you how they feel. But what we want them to conceptualize is the way I feel is connected to what I'm thinking in the moment. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And then the self-talk, which is probably not good, we want the client to identify, okay, what are you saying to yourself in that moment? And then number 4, and these are 4 very basic uh, things that you will repeat in your coaching when it comes to helping a client to analyze, uh, in this case, her insecurities. All right. How do you respond in that moment or behave in that moment? Or how do you act in that moment? So I'll just put respond, act, or behave in that moment. You want the client to be able to identify that. Because when it comes to changing it, it's easy to say, as we look at how this is presented, that the thought has to change, right? And we know that the thoughts have to change. But because I wanna do things a little differently. We want to put, because we're saying that self-talk has to be the superhero. We want the self-talk to change first. And then we want the self-talk to be so impactful that they believe what they're telling themselves so that the thoughts change and the feelings change. And then the behavior changes. So initially, we want to help the clients to explore their thoughts. Actually, should I flip this? I'm thinking of, I want to be, I'm in the moment right now. I'm thinking, should we flip this? What are you thinking in the moment? What are you feeling in the moment? What are you telling yourself in the moment? And how do you respond or act or behave in that moment? I'm gonna leave it just like it is. I'm gonna give some more thought to this, um, and then circle back before we close out this year. I wanna, I don't want to speak in haste. I want to some time to kind of marinate on the order of things, uh, and kind of go from there. So we want to help the client to explore his or her thoughts, his or her feelings, his or her self-talk, his or her behaviors. But we want the self-talk to definitely be the superhero, to provoke a change of thoughts and feelings and behaviors. All right. So getting back to logic, what we call logic 101, what you're going to do with your client, uh, we're saying to your client, whoever you are, if you compare to others, then you will become angry. We established that, right? Are you with me?
Yeah, yeah.
If you compare yourself to others, that's the condition. Then the conclusion, you become angry. All right. So then we start to explore with the client how that is his or her logic. Now, as coaches, we want to help the client to change that logic into a win-win scenario, because we explore through that logic that the client is losing by comparing his or herself to others. Why? Because it results in anger. And the conclusion is as such. But if the client who is struggling with anger as a result of comparing his or herself to others, logically speaking, we have to change the condition in order to change the conclusion. Does that make sense?
Mm.
So from this sample, what we do is we actually help the client to write that out. If I'm comparing myself to others on social media, if I'm comparing myself to others, and when I'm out, then I become angry. So now I got to change the condition in order to change the conclusion. So we don't necessarily write it out for them in its entirety. What we do is we challenge the client to change the condition. So we want to say, all right, if comparing yourself to others causes you to become angry, that's a lose-lose situation. So let's change the condition. So the client has to stop something and start something else. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
They have to stop comparing themselves to others and start comparing themselves with themselves. And then the hope is that the conclusion will change. So then they fill out, if they're doing this in writing, in the journal, they fill out the conclusion portion. We help them to change the condition. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So this is this, and I'm just giving you a short synopsis of something that you can do with your clients. I call it Logic 101. You can call it whatever you whatever you want to call it. But we're just plugging in on a whiteboard if, because it introduces a condition, and then because it introduces a conclusion. And we walk the client through their own logic, which will show them why they're losing, why they are actually losing. Our job as coaches is to help them to win. So we have to change the condition, and the client has to change the conclusion. And then they start to see, all right, well, based upon that logic, it makes sense. It makes sense that if I compare myself to others because I am insecure, then it results in me being angry. All right, so I just wanted to reintroduce that particular exercise, which I'm encouraging coaches to do with their clients. And if you're listening, you can actually do this with yourself. You don't need a coach necessarily, unless you're constantly failing. Then I would urge you to, drop your pride, reach out to a coach, myself or Jamar, and we can help you. We can at least jumpstart this activity for you. But if you're, self-sufficient enough, self-empowered enough, and you can do this, you can just write this out on your own in your own journals. If and then. If I do this, if I continue to do this, then this will, or you can start with the then. You can start with the conclusion. Say, man, I keep doing this over and over and over again, and it's because of this condition. And then you can work towards changing the condition. All right. So I just wanted to, talk that through for a moment. All right, I'm gonna stop sharing my whiteboard here. Any thoughts come to mind before we move on? Anything you want to share?
No, I'm taking it in.
Okay. Cool enough. All right. Let me close this out. All right, I'm gonna share my screen. Let's go back to the article. And I'm going to back up because I think we're actually on part 3. And we're going to close out part 3 today. Let me go back. The article is called Disarming Your Buttons, How Not to Get or How Not to Be Provoked. This is part 3 of 4 by Dr. Leon Seltzer. Very, very big fan. Your coach is a very big fan of psychology today. I strongly encourage it. All right. So, inoculating yourself against external irritants. All right, is the subtitle here. All right, so it reads, part 1 of this post focused on better understanding the origins of your hot button. Part 2 centered on resolving past disturbances that created these buttons in the first place. Now, in the next 2 parts, the author says it's time to look at ways of preparing yourself in the present to better cope with people and circumstances that still seem to threaten your mental and emotional equilibrium, i.e., outward forces that continue to activate your not yet disconnected buttons. All right. Not less an author than Albert Ellis has written a book entitled How to Keep People from Pushing Your Buttons. Ellis, who is the founder of Rational Emotive Therapy, which was later revised to Rational Emotive Behavior Therapy, posited, similar to cognitive behaviorists, that the only way to alter negative feelings was to alter the thoughts precipitating them. And he viewed the recognition and alteration of these thoughts as crucial, for ultimately one's very behavior was triggered by the feelings directly resulting from such thoughts. Simply put, thoughts induce feelings, and feelings induce behavior. To Ellis, no person or thing could, in and of themselves, cause you to react a particular way because it's always your interpretation of the outside stimulus that finally governs your reaction to it. All right. So let me go to my whiteboard for a minute. And what I wrote out, some notes from the article. The only way to alter negative feelings is to alter the thoughts that precede them. All right. Recognizing thoughts and altering those thoughts is key. So we have to recognize those thoughts. This is why I encourage journaling. Write out literally what you were thinking in the moment, right? And then you can start to work on altering those thoughts. All right. But you first have to identify what those thoughts are. All right. Let's go back to the article. So then it says, so to Ellis, as to Aaron Beck, who is the grandfather of cognitive therapy, in order to help individuals change, it's essential to help them to identify the irrational thoughts, assumptions, and beliefs that inevitably culminate in emotional distress and dysfunctional behavior. So this is another good reason why I do the Logic 101 exercise. Because you'll find that during those exercises, with the word if, which introduces a condition, then which introduces a conclusion, we will find, or most will find, that most of the thoughts that you have, especially particularly when it comes to warranting the conclusion of destructive behaviors or behaviors that aren't any good, toxic behaviors and things of that nature, you'll find that in doing these exercises that the thoughts that we have are irrational. For example, it is not rational to think that you're going to create any kind of win-win scenario if your condition isn't changed to warrant a different conclusion. So that's why it's important to start with the condition, or like I said, you can do things in reverse and you can start with the conclusion and change the condition. Or like I said, just saying it again on purpose, you can begin with the condition in order to change the conclusion. But either way you put it, your thoughts are either rational or irrational, logical or illogical. And most irrational thinking and illogical thinking are the result of, as we said earlier, the adult sitting down and the kid and you standing up. And the kid is ruled by his or her emotions. All right. So let's continue on. It says, in many of my previous posts, I've discussed how vital your self-talk is, which I said earlier, has to be the superhero. I've discussed how vital your self-talk is to your psychological welfare. Here, I'd like to hone in on just how you need to talk to yourself in tense situations so that what's provoked you in the past will cease to provoke you, or at least provoke you much less than may formerly have been the case. All right. As I noted earlier in part 2 of this post, anything that's bothering you in the past is likely to bother you in the future, unless, that is, you've come to view it differently and in a way much less likely to incite you. So this is actually a snapshot of part 2 that we covered last week. So it's about changing your perception. And he gets into that in this particular section of the article. He says, so for instance, if you view your spouse's tardiness as a sign of their not much caring about you, then their lack of punctuality is virtually guaranteed to push your buttons. However, if you begin to understand your partner as simply having an enormous problem with time management, realizing that they're late with others quite as much as with yourself, and also that their inability to be ready on time has nothing to do with their actual caring for you, which they may have clearly demonstrated in multiple ways, then with such a revised perception on your part, their chronic tardiness is far less likely to upset you. Seeing their personality flaw as meaning something quite different from what you previously assumed, you're likely to cut them considerably more slack. And with practice, you might even begin to smile at their being so punctually challenged, now that you're able to see it more charitably as a personal shortcoming rather than a personal affront. All right. So we discussed that last week, changing our perception. The second thing that we discussed last week was called covert rehearsal, which is about mentally practicing for a possibly difficult encounter by rehearsing it in your head. In your mind's eye, as it were, you act out how you like it to go. So an approach only works, of course, if you possess the insight, emotional poise, and interpersonal skills to make it work. But if, in fact, you've learned from your past mistakes and additionally have acquired the ability to approach the conflict, the doctor says, or potential conflict differently, it can be invaluable to mentally rehearse how you might handle the current situation so as to maximize the chances of a positive outcome. All right. So I won't go into that further, but those are two key things that we could do to create a win-win scenario. All right. Let's see what else we want to cover. Any questions so far? Any thoughts come to mind?
Nah, bro, I'm good.
Taking it in? Okay, no worries. So when we go down later in the article, it says here are the first two categories, as well as some samples of the kinds of self-talk that can assist you in diffusing any possible upset. So the first one that the doctor highlights is relaxation reminders. And I'll say to this point, before I read on, sometimes, Jamar, I find, even in myself, that sometimes just taking a look, we got it right here with me. Taking a drink of water before you respond can help to calm you down.
Mm-hmm. I always count to
Sometimes you
10.
get those heated arguments, and if you just sit back and take a sip of water, it can calm you down, man.
Just
In a moment.
breathe. Count to 10.
Or breathing.
Count to 10. It's a lot of change. You count to 10. You'd be surprised.
Yeah. Something real simple
Yeah.
and real practical.
Just count to 10 and breathe. Like,
Yep. So it says here, to the point, it says relaxation reminders. In preparing for a possible conflict, it's essential that you do everything feasible to put yourself in a relaxed state. If you start out feeling uptight, you'll thereby up the chances that the interaction to follow quickly begins to push your buttons. Some useful phrases or mantras to say to yourself include, okay, just take a deep breath and relax. This is how you have to talk to yourself sometimes. Or, I need to check my body for tension and relax whatever feels tight. Or, I can stay calm in all this. Or, it's time for me to relax and slow things down. All right. Then we have reassurance and psychologically readying yourself for a difficult interaction. You want to give yourself something of a pep talk to tell yourself that you have the resources to deal with any provocation that might occur. So your script here might include such calming statements as, quote, though this could upset me, I know how to deal with it. Or, I can figure out a way to handle this. Or, I don't need to get into an argument. I can handle the situation before it escalates. I know for me, reassurance helps. And as a coach, sometimes what's helpful to me is for me to pause and think about what I tell other people that I coach. Right? And just look, being or practicing what you preach, as the old phrase would say. Sometimes it's important. Look, because I don't, even though I coach, I never claim to be anything but human. And look, I fall short sometimes too. So I have to make sure that my self-talk is reassuring. And I can say, hey, I got this. You know what? I'm not even going to allow myself to get frustrated. I'm not even going to allow myself to take this personally. I'm going to listen to understand, not to defend. So I have to reassure myself sometimes that I can be that guy in tense moments. All right. Anything you want to add to that before we move on? Oh, you good?
I'm good, yeah.
Okay. All right. And then the final category that the doctor mentions is stopping triggering thoughts. And he is actually going to expound on that a lot in part 4. So I think we can save that for next week. And we can just go over this as an introduction. Part 4, all right. Again, disarming your buttons, how not to be provoked. How can you tell whether your negative assumptions make sense? All right. So just brief introduction. He says, stop triggering thoughts. Triggering thoughts include all your false assumptions and beliefs that lead to getting your buttons pushed. Almost inevitably, these thoughts involve logical fallacies. Hence, another reason, Jamar, why I do the Logic 101 exercise. He says, so internally refuting them isn't really a matter of deluding yourself through glib affirmations, but questioning the unwarranted notions that may in the past have led you to lose. Remember, the goal, close that out, the goal is to create a win-win scenario. He says below, I list 7 types of distorted trigger thoughts that can prompt you to overreact. If you're able to change these irrational thoughts, the distressing emotions deriving from them should change as well. Better, the things that formerly provoked you will no longer do so once you've managed to bring a new understanding to them. And then he gets into different types of button pushing thoughts, as well as what you can say to yourself to effectively combat them. All right. So we're going to press pause on the presentation, and we're going to pick up where we left off next week. Man, this is a really good article. In fact, I keep telling myself I'm going to send you the article, but I'm going to do it. If I don't do it after this, after we stop filming. If I don't do this right after we finish, I'm going to get distracted because I know I got to prepare for the podcast. So I'm going to share this with you. Again, it has 4 parts. So in either one of these, you can click 2, part 3, part 4. And if you get a chance, you can check it out. And we can have some discussion about it next week. All right. Very good. Let me pause and give a shout out to some people who checked in on TikTok. Mrs. Misty, salute. Thanks for checking in. Charger Guy, thanks for checking in, buddy. Lula, thanks for checking in. King, salute. Thank you for checking in. Annie, salute. David, thanks for checking in. Keisha, we have Shane, we have B Breezy. Thanks for checking in. Kiera, Bud, thanks for checking in. Joy, Michael. Let's see what else we have. We have Mayor for President, thanks for checking in. Malik, thanks for checking in. Silanita, I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. If I don't, charge to my head, not to my heart. Thanks for checking in with us. Amir, thanks for checking in. Anaya, thanks for checking in. Freya, thanks for checking in. Peyton, salute. Jared, man, we need to catch up, Jared. Thanks for checking in, young brother. King Jar, thank you. Samantha, thank you for checking in. Valerie, salute. Thanks for checking in. Who else we got? Melinda. We had Kelvin, thanks for checking in. Kalia, thanks for checking in as well. Joey, thanks for checking in. And if I did not mention you, Vinny, thanks for joining. Good brother. Tasha, thanks for checking in. Parker, thank you for joining as well. And again, a lot of people checked in, and I really appreciate all of you guys. Salute. And Lord willing, we will see you guys next week. as we said back in the day, on the same bat time and the same bat channel. All right. Peace. All right. Good brother. Good brother.